Kangtae wiped the oil from his hands and looked at the broken navigation system on his workbench. It was old technology, at least 50 years behind what most species used now, but the small trader who owned it could not afford anything better. So Tae did what he always did. He fixed it. The space station called Horizon's Edge floated at the meeting point of 12 different star systems. It was a place where aliens from across the galaxy came to trade, negotiate, and sometimes fight. Thousands of beings lived here, each one stranger than the last. There were the tall, thin Morvani with their glass-like skin, the small, furry Threll who spoke in whistles, the ancient Yenni who moved so slowly that conversations with them took hours. And then there was Tai, just one human among all these amazing creatures. Nobody special. Nobody important. He had come to the station 3 years ago, looking for work after his grandfather's repair shop on Earth closed down. His grandfather had taught him everything about fixing machines. Not with fancy computers or nanobots, but with hands and tools and patience. A machine will tell you what is wrong, his grandfather used to say. You just have to listen. Most aliens thought this was a strange way to work. They had technology that could scan and repair almost anything automatically. Why would anyone use their hands? But Tae's methods worked, especially on old equipment that modern systems could not understand. So he found enough work to survive. His workshop was small, tucked away in the lower levels of the station where the lights flickered and the air recyclers hummed too loud. He liked it there. It was quiet. Nobody bothered him. That changed on a Tuesday. Tae did not know it was Tuesday, of course. In space, days meant nothing. But his computer still kept Earth time, and he liked to pretend his weeks had some structure. He was eating his lunch, a simple bowl of rice and vegetables from the station's human food vendor, when his door slid open with a harsh sound. A figure stood in the doorway, so large that it blocked all the light from the corridor. Tae looked up and nearly choked on his rice. It was a Kethani warrior. He had seen them before, from a distance. They were impossible to miss, standing over 7 feet tall, covered in scales that shimmered like gems, with 4 muscular arms and eyes that glowed like hot coals. The Kethani were one of the most feared species in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of worlds before deciding that war was boring and honor was more interesting. The warrior stepped inside, and Tae saw that he was carrying something. A large piece of metal, shaped like a chest plate. Even from across the room, Tae could see it was damaged. A long crack ran down the center, and small sparks flickered from the edges. The warrior spoke, but his words were harsh and unfamiliar. Tae's translator struggled with the dialect, catching only pieces. Fix. Important. Queen. Please. Queen. Tae felt his stomach tighten. He had heard that the Kethani Queen herself was visiting the station for some important diplomatic meeting. The whole place had been in chaos, preparing for her arrival. The warrior held out the chest plate with trembling hands. His eyes were wide, desperate. Whatever this armor was, it clearly meant everything to him. Tae hesitated. He knew nothing about Kethani technology. He did not understand their culture or their customs. For all he knew, touching this armor could start a war. But the warrior looked so scared, so lost. Okay, Tae said slowly. Put it on the bench. I will see what I can do. The warrior placed the armor down like it was made of glass. Then he stepped back and stood very still, watching Tae with those burning eyes. Tae took a deep breath and got to work. The armor was beautiful, even broken. The metal was something he had never seen before, dark purple with veins of gold running through it. The crack was deep, cutting through layers of circuitry that pulsed with faint energy. This was not just armor. It was alive, in some strange way. He worked slowly, carefully. His grandfather had taught him to never rush. "Rushing breaks more than it fixes," the old man would say. So Tay took his time. He cleaned the crack first, removing tiny pieces of debris. Then he examined the circuits, tracing each line with his eyes until he understood how they connected. The design was clever, but it had a weakness. The energy flow was unbalanced, putting too much pressure on the center of the plate. That was why it had cracked. Tay could fix the crack easily. But if he did not fix the balance problem, it would just break again. He made a decision. He would do more than repair this armor. He would make it better. 6 hours passed. The warrior never moved, never spoke. Tay forgot he was there, lost in his work. He rerouted the energy channels, spreading the flow more evenly. He reinforced the weak points with additional supports. He sealed the crack with a bonding agent that would be stronger than the original metal. When he finished, the armor looked brand new, better than new. The circuits hummed with power, bright and steady. The surface gleamed under the workshop lights. Tay stepped back and wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Done," he said. The warrior moved forward slowly. He looked at the armor for a long moment. Then he looked at Tay. His expression was impossible to read. Were those tears in his glowing eyes? Suddenly, the warrior dropped to his knees. He pressed his forehead against the floor, his forearms spread wide in what was clearly a gesture of deep respect. Tay said, uncomfortable. "You do not have to do that. It was just a repair job." The warrior lifted his head. "You do not understand," he said, his translator finally working properly. "What you have done? There are no words." Before Tay could ask what he meant, the warrior grabbed the armor and ran from the workshop. His heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor until they faded to silence. Tay stood alone, confused. He looked at his tools, then at the empty workbench where the armor had been. Something felt strange. Something felt important. But he could not figure out what. He shrugged and returned to his lunch. The rice was cold now, but he ate it anyway. Tomorrow he would understand what he had done. Tomorrow, his quiet life would end forever. But tonight, he was just Kang Tay, the mechanic nobody noticed, eating cold rice in his small workshop at the edge of the galaxy. He had no idea that he had just become the most famous human in the universe. Tay woke up to the sound of chanting. At first, he thought he was dreaming. The voices were deep and rhythmic, like monks singing an ancient prayer. But as his eyes opened and the fog of sleep cleared from his mind, he realized the sound was coming from outside his door. He sat up slowly, his heart beating faster. His quarters were small, just a bed, a desk, and a tiny bathroom. The walls were thin. He could hear everything that happened in the corridor, and right now the corridor sounded very full. He pulled on his work clothes and walked to the door. When it slid open, he froze. 12 Cathani warriors stood in the hallway. They were arranged in 2 perfect lines, 6 on each side, creating a path from his door to the elevator. Each warrior wore ceremonial armor that gleamed under the lights. Each warrior had their head bowed. The chanting stopped the moment they saw him. "Good morning, Groom," one of them said. Tay blinked. "What did you call me?" "Groom," the warrior repeated. He pressed a clawed hand against his chest, right over his heart. "You are the Groom." This had to be a mistake, a translation error. Maybe Groom meant something different in the Cathani language. Maybe it meant friend or helpful stranger. I think there is a misunderstanding, Tay said carefully. I am just a mechanic. I fixed some armor yesterday. That is all. The warriors looked at each other. Their expressions were hard to read, but Tay thought he saw confusion there, as if they could not understand why he was saying these words. You are the Groom, another warrior said, more firmly this time. You touched the soul plate. You improved the soul plate. The ritual is complete. Soul plate? Ritual? Tay felt like he was trying to read a book in a language he did not know. I need to go to work, he said, hoping to escape this strange situation. Please, excuse me. The warriors did not stop him, but they followed him. All 12 of them, walking in perfect formation behind him as he made his way to the cafeteria. Other aliens in the corridor stopped and stared. Some whispered to each other. Some looked at Tai with sympathy. Others looked at him with what might have been fear. The cafeteria was crowded at this hour. Beings of all species gathered here to eat breakfast and share gossip. Tai usually sat alone in a corner, eating quietly while reading repair manuals on his tablet. Today, that was not possible. The moment he stepped through the door, every Cathani in the room rose to their feet. There were at least 30 of them, part of the diplomatic delegation that had arrived for the treaty negotiations. They all turned to face him. They all pressed their hands to their chests. Groom, they said together, their voices echoing off the walls. The room went silent. Everyone was watching now. Tay felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. What is happening? He whispered to himself. A hand grabbed his arm. He turned to see Commander Hyun, his human supervisor. Hyun was a retired military officer with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had been stationed on Horizon's Edge for 15 years and knew more about alien politics than anyone Tay had ever met. Come with me, Hyun said quietly. Now. He pulled Tai out of the cafeteria and into a small meeting room. The door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. What did you do? Hyun asked. I fixed some armor, Tay said, his voice rising with frustration. A warrior brought me a broken chest plate. I repaired it. That is all. I do not understand why everyone is calling me this word. Groom, Hyun said. They are calling you Groom. Do you know what that means? A groom takes care of horses? Or it is the man at a wedding? Hyun stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Oh, you poor fool. You have no idea what you have done. Before he could explain, the door slid open again. A Cathani woman entered, older than the warriors, wearing robes instead of armor. Her scales were faded with age, and her movements were slow and careful. I am High Priestess Oris, she said. I must speak with the human called Kang Tay. Tay stepped forward. That is me. Oris studied him with ancient eyes. You are smaller than I expected. Softer. I do not understand what the Queen sees in you. The Queen? Tay's voice came out as a squeak. The door opened again. This time everyone in the room held their breath. Queen Vera of the Cathani Empire entered the room. She was magnificent and terrifying. Nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that shifted between violet and gold depending on how the light touched them. 4 powerful arms hung at her sides, each one decorated with golden bands. Her eyes burned crimson, bright as dying stars. She wore no crown, but she did not need one. Everything about her screamed royalty, power, authority. And she was looking directly at Tay. So, she said, her voice deep and smooth like distant thunder, You are the human who touched my soul plate. Tay opened his mouth, but no words came out. His brain had stopped working. He could only stare. He finally managed. I did not know it was yours. The warrior. He just brought it to me. He said it was important. I only wanted to help. Vera took a step closer. Even that small movement made Tay want to run. She was a predator, and he was very small prey. Help, she repeated. You call it help. My people call it something else entirely. What do they call it? The queen was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost uncertain. They call it a proposal, a bond, a promise of eternal partnership. She paused. They call it marriage. The word hit Tay like a punch to the stomach. Marriage? He had fixed some armor and accidentally proposed to an alien queen? There must be a way to undo this, he said desperately. A way to cancel the ritual, or whatever it is. I did not mean to propose to anyone. I do not even know you. Vera looked at High Priestess Oris. The old woman shook her head slowly. The ritual cannot be undone, Oris said. The soul plate was touched. The soul plate was improved. In 3,000 years of history, no one has ever improved a soul plate. You did not just accept her offer, human. You returned it with interest. By every law, every tradition, every sacred text we possess, you are now betrothed to Queen Vera. Tay's legs felt weak. He grabbed the edge of a table to keep himself standing. I was just trying to be helpful, he whispered. Queen Vera made a sound that might have been a sigh. When Tay looked at her again, he saw something surprising in her expression. She was not angry. She was not pleased. She looked just as lost and confused as he felt. I did not intend for this to happen, she said. The guard was supposed to take my armor to our own smiths. He made a mistake. But the mistake has been made, and now we must deal with its consequences. Tay thought about his small workshop, his quiet life, his cold rice and his flickering lights, and his peaceful loneliness. All of that was gone now. He was engaged to a queen, and he had no idea what to do about it. The meeting room felt smaller now, crowded with tension and unanswered questions. Commander Hyun had brought chairs, and everyone sat in uncomfortable silence while High Priestess Oris prepared to explain. Tay watched her carefully. The old Cathani woman moved like someone carrying the weight of centuries. Every gesture was slow, deliberate, full of meaning. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but powerful, like wind through ancient trees. To understand what has happened, Oris began, you must first understand what the soul plate means to our people. She reached into her robes and pulled out a small piece of metal, no bigger than her palm. It was old, worn smooth by years of touching. This is a piece of my own soul plate, she said. It broke in battle many years ago, and I kept this fragment. Even now, I can feel my history in it. My first victory, my first defeat. The day I became a priestess. The day I lost my bonded partner. She closed her eyes. Every moment of my life, recorded in metal. Tay leaned forward, curious despite his fear. How does that work? Is it some kind of technology? Technology? Oris smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Perhaps, but we do not think of it that way. To us, the soul plate is alive. It grows with us. It changes with us. It knows us better than we know ourselves. She put the fragment away and turned to face Tay directly. When a Cathani is born, a soul plate is forged from special metals found only on our home world. The newborn's first breath touches the plate, and from that moment, they are connected. The plate sits over the heart, protecting the most vital part of the body. But it does more than protect. It records. It remembers. It becomes a physical representation of the warrior's soul. That is beautiful, Tay admitted. It is sacred, Oris corrected. The most sacred thing in our culture. And because of this, there are strict rules about who may touch a soul plate. Let me guess, Hyun said dryly. Nobody is supposed to touch it. Correct. Parents do not touch their children's soul plates. Friends do not touch each other's soul plates. Even healers, when treating wounds, must work around the plate rather than removing it. Oris paused, letting the weight of her words settle. There is only one exception. Only one circumstance in which touching another's soul plate is permitted. Marriage, Tay said quietly. Bonding, Oris corrected. We call it bonding. When two Kithani decide to spend their lives together, they exchange soul plates. Each partner holds the other's plate for one night, sleeping with it against their chest. This is the most intimate act in our culture. More intimate than any physical contact. More meaningful than any words. It says, I trust you with my entire history, my entire self. Tay's stomach twisted. And I touched the Queen's soul plate. You did more than touch it. Oris stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. The Queen's soul plate was damaged in a training accident last week. She tried to hide it, not wanting to show weakness during the diplomatic mission. She gave it to a trusted guard with instructions to take it to our smiths for repair. The guard brought it to me by mistake, Tay said. Yes, he was new, unfamiliar with the station. He saw a repair shop and assumed it was the right place. Oris turned back to face him. But here is where the situation becomes truly extraordinary. You did not just repair the soul plate, you improved it. Queen Vera, who had been silent until now, made a small sound. Everyone looked at her. She was staring at her hands, her expression unreadable. The energy flow, she said slowly. I felt it the moment I put the armor back on. It was better, smoother, like the plate finally fit me properly, after 200 years of wearing it. In 3,000 years of recorded history, Oris continued, no one has ever improved a soul plate. Our smiths repair them, yes. They keep them functional. But the design is sacred, unchanged since the first warriors created it. To alter the design is forbidden. But I did not know that, Tay protested. The universe does not care what you knew, Oris said firmly. It only cares what you did. And what you did was take another being's soul into your hands and make it better. In our culture, this is not just acceptance of a bond. It is the greatest declaration of love possible. You looked at the Queen's very essence and said, I see room for improvement. I can make you stronger. Let me help you grow. The room fell silent again. Tay tried to process everything he had heard. His simple repair job, done with good intentions and grandfather's tools, had accidentally become the most romantic gesture in Kithani history. Can the bond be broken? He asked finally. Oris shook her head. Never. A bond, once formed, lasts until death. And sometimes beyond. But we did not both agree to this. It was an accident. Surely that matters. It does not. Oris sat down again, her old bones creaking. Our traditions do not require verbal agreement. Actions speak louder than words. Your actions said everything that needed to be said. Tay looked at Queen Vera. She was still staring at her hands, her crimson eyes distant. What do you want? He asked her directly. She looked up, surprised by the question. For a moment, the powerful queen disappeared, and Tay saw someone else, someone uncertain, someone young, despite her 200 years. "I do not know," she admitted. "This morning, I was a queen focused on treaty negotiations. Tonight, I have an accidental betrothed. I have not had time to think about what I want." "Then let us take time," Tay said. "I am not going anywhere. You are not going anywhere. We can figure this out together." Oris made a disapproving sound. "There is no time. The news has already spread across the station. By tomorrow, it will reach the homeworld. The people will demand answers. They will demand action." "What kind of action?" Hyun asked. "The queen must either proceed with the bonding ceremony or—" Oris hesitated. "There is one other option. If another suitor challenges the bond before it is formalized, they can claim the right to compete for the queen's hand." Vera's head snapped up. "Dre," she said, the name coming out like a curse. "Who is Dre?" Tay asked. "Prince Dre of the Northern Territories," Oris explained. "He has been courting the queen for 40 years. Combat duels, poetry recitals, grand gestures of honor. He is persistent." "He is annoying," Vera muttered. "And now he has a reason to challenge," Oris continued. "If he defeats the human in ritual combat, the bond will be transferred to him instead." Tay felt cold. "Ritual combat? You mean a fight? I have to fight an alien warrior prince." "To the death," Oris confirmed. The words hung in the air like a death sentence, because that was exactly what they were. Tay thought about his options. He could run, but where would he go? The Cathani had ships everywhere. He could hide, but they would find him eventually. He could refuse to fight, but Oris had made it clear that traditions could not be ignored. He was trapped by a kindness that had turned into a catastrophe. "Well," Hyun said, breaking the silence with his usual dark humor, "I always said your repairs would get you in trouble someday. I just did not expect this kind of trouble." Tay laughed, but it was a hollow sound. He was engaged to a queen, hunted by a prince, and facing a death duel he could not win. And all because he had tried to help. The challenge came faster than anyone expected. Prince Dre arrived on the station the very next day, his ship cutting through space like a blade through silk. His vessel was massive, decorated with battle trophies and flags of conquered enemies. When he walked through the docking bay, his footsteps echoed like thunder. Tay watched from a viewing window above. Dre was everything Tay was not. Tall, powerful, covered in scales that shone like polished emeralds. His forearms were thick with muscle, each one capable of crushing bone. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. Someone who never expected to lose. "That is him?" Tay asked quietly. Commander Hyun nodded. "Prince Dre, war hero, champion of 12 death duels. They say he once killed a Morvani giant with his bare hands. And I am supposed to fight him. You could always surrender. Accept defeat before the duel begins. What happens if I surrender?" Hyun's silence was answer enough. The official challenge came that evening. Dre stood in the station's central plaza, surrounded by hundreds of watching aliens. His voice boomed through the speakers, translated into a dozen languages. "I challenge the human called Kang Tae for the right to bond with Queen Vera. Let him face me in combat, as tradition demands. Let him prove his worth, or die trying." The crowd murmured. Many looked at Tae with pity. A few made gestures that probably meant "good luck" or "rest in peace." Nobody seemed to think he had a chance. Later that night, Tae sat alone in his workshop. He had not eaten all day. His hands were shaking. He kept looking at his tools, his repair manuals, his grandfather's old toolkit. None of these things could save him. His communication screen beeped. An incoming call from Earth. He hesitated, then answered. His sister Yuna appeared on the screen. She was 5 years younger than him, still living in their hometown, working as a teacher. Her face was filled with concern. "I saw the news," she said. "The whole planet is talking about it. My brother, engaged to an alien queen. My brother, challenged to a death duel." She paused. "Are you okay?" "No," Tay admitted. "I am very much not okay." "Tell me everything." So he did. He told her about the armor, the soul plate, the accidental proposal. He told her about Queen Vera's uncertain expression and High Priestess Oris's stern warnings. He told her about Prince Dre and the impossible fight ahead. Yuna listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Do you remember what Grandfather always said about solving problems? Every problem has a solution. You just have to find the right tool." "Exactly." Yuna leaned closer to the screen. "You are not a warrior, brother. You will never be a warrior. But you are the best mechanic I have ever known. So stop trying to think like a fighter. Think like a mechanic. Find the right tool." After the call ended, Tay sat in silence for a long time. Think like a mechanic. Find the right tool. He started researching. He read everything he could find about Cathani dueling traditions. The rules were ancient and complex, filled with exceptions and special cases. Most duels were fought with swords, but that was not the only option. And then he found it. According to tradition, the challenged party had the right to choose the nature of the contest. The rule had been created thousands of years ago, meant to ensure that disabled or injured warriors could still defend their honor. It had been used rarely, mostly for tests of wisdom or endurance. But nothing in the rules said the contest had to be physical combat. Tay smiled for the first time in days. The next morning, he requested an audience with High Priestess Oris. She arrived at his workshop looking tired and worried. "Have you come to surrender?" she asked. "No, I have come to choose my contest." Oris raised an eyebrow. "You know of that tradition?" "I read about it. The challenged party chooses the nature of the duel. Prince Dre must accept, or he forfeits his challenge." "That is correct. But what contest could you possibly choose? Every form of combat favors the Cathani. Strength, speed, endurance, weapon skill. Dre excels at all of them." Tay walked to his workbench and picked up a broken engine component. It was small, complicated, filled with tiny parts that required careful attention. "I choose a repair contest," he said. Oris stared at him. "A repair contest? Both contestants will receive identical broken machines. The winner is whoever fixes theirs first and best. Speed and quality both count." Tay set down the component. "This is my ground. This is my weapon. If Prince Dre wants to take the queen from me, he will have to beat me at my own game." For a long moment, Oris said nothing. Her ancient eyes studied Tay with new interest, as if seeing him properly for the first time. "You are clever," she finally said. "Cleverer than I expected from a human." "Is that a compliment?" "It is an observation." She stood straighter, her expression becoming formal. "Very well. I will present your choice to Prince Dre. By tradition, he must accept or withdraw his challenge." "He will accept," Tay said. "His pride will not let him refuse." He was right. Prince Dre's response came within the hour. His message was short and full of contempt. "I accept the human's foolish challenge. If he wishes to lose at children's games instead of honorable combat, so be it. The result will be the same. The duel was scheduled for 3 days later. News of the strange contest spread across the station, then across the sector, then across the galaxy. A Cathani prince competing with a human mechanic in a repair race? It was absurd. It was unprecedented. Everyone wanted to watch. Commander Hyun found Tae in his workshop, practicing on broken equipment. "You know he will cheat," Hyun said. "How?" "The machines will be identical. The judges will watch us both. I do not know how, but he will try. Men like Dre do not lose. They cannot accept it." Tae nodded slowly. "Then I will have to be so good that even cheating cannot help him." He returned to his work, hands moving with practiced ease. 3 days was not much time, but he had been preparing for this contest his entire life. Every repair he had ever done, every lesson his grandfather had taught him, every late night spent solving impossible problems, it all led to this. Somewhere in the station, Prince Dre was probably preparing too. Learning about machines, studying repair techniques, trying to compress years of training into a few short days. Tae almost felt sorry for him. Almost, but not quite. Because this was his moment, his chance to prove that humans were more than soft creatures lost among the stars. His chance to show the galaxy what a mechanic could do. He picked up his grandfather's oldest tool, a simple wrench worn smooth by decades of use, and got back to work. The observation deck had never been so crowded. Every seat was filled, and thousands more beings stood along the walls, pressed together like fish in a net. Screens throughout the station broadcast the event to those who could not attend in person. Ships in orbit had stopped moving, their crews gathered around viewports to watch. Across the galaxy, billions of beings paused their lives to witness the strangest duel in recorded history. Tae stood at his workstation, a simple metal table with a broken engine sitting in the center. The engine was a standard model used in small transport ships, deliberately damaged in specific ways. The same engine sat on an identical table across the room, where Prince Dre waited. The prince looked uncomfortable. His massive body was built for battle, not precision work. His 4 hands, each one capable of crushing steel, seemed clumsy and awkward, holding delicate tools. He had spent 3 days learning about repair work, and it showed. His movements were stiff, uncertain. He kept looking at his tools as if they might bite him. High Priestess Oris stood between them, acting as the official judge. 2 other judges, experts in engineering from neutral species, flanked her. Everything had been arranged to be perfectly fair. "The rules are simple," Oris announced, her voice echoing through the silent hall. "Both contestants will repair the same model of engine. The contest ends when both repairs are complete, or after 6 hours, whichever comes first. The winner will be determined by 2 factors: speed and quality. A faster but inferior repair will not defeat a slower but superior one." She paused, looking at both contestants. "Prince Dre, Kang Tae, do you both understand and accept these rules?" "I accept," Dre growled. "I accept," Tae said quietly. "Then begin." A bell rang. The duel started. Tae did not rush. He stood still for almost a full minute, just looking at the engine. He could hear whispers from the crowd, people wondering if he had frozen with fear. But he was not afraid. He was listening. "Every machine has a voice," his grandfather used to say. "You just have to know how to hear it." He circled the engine slowly, examining it from every angle. He noted the visible damage: a cracked casing, disconnected fuel lines, a burned circuit board. But he also noted the hidden problems, the slight vibration that suggested a loose internal component, the faint smell of melted plastic that indicated electrical damage, the tiny scratch marks that showed where previous repairs had been done badly. Only when he understood the full picture did he pick up his first tool. Across the room, Prince Dre had already torn into his engine. His four hands worked simultaneously, pulling apart components with raw strength, pieces scattered across his table. He moved fast, desperate to prove that this contest was beneath him. But speed without understanding was worthless. Tay could see that Dre was making mistakes, removing parts in the wrong order, damaging connections that were already fragile, creating new problems while trying to solve old ones. Tay worked steadily, methodically. He removed each damaged component with care, setting them aside in organized rows. He cleaned the engine as he went, removing dirt and debris that could cause future failures. He traced each wire and tube, making sure he understood how everything connected. 2 hours passed. Dre was sweating, his scales darkening with stress. His engine lay in pieces, a chaotic mess that looked more destroyed than repaired. He kept stopping to check diagrams on a tablet, trying to remember which part went where. Tay had finished removing the damaged components and was now beginning reassembly. His movements were smooth, almost musical. He did not need diagrams. His hands knew what to do. Years of practice had made this work as natural as breathing. 3 hours. Dre had finally started reassembling his engine, but the pieces would not fit together properly. He had bent something during disassembly, and now the whole structure was slightly off balance. He forced components into place with brute strength, not realizing he was causing more damage. Tay was more than halfway done. He paused occasionally to check his work, making small adjustments, ensuring everything was perfect. The crowd had gone completely silent, watching his hands move with hypnotic precision. 4 hours. Tay's engine was almost complete. He was now fine-tuning the systems, adjusting energy flows, and calibrating sensors. These were the details that separated a good repair from a great one. Most mechanics would have stopped already. Tay kept going. Dre's engine was a disaster. He had managed to reassemble most of it, but sparks were flying from one corner, and a strange grinding noise came from inside. He was staring at it with confusion and growing rage. 4.5 hours. Tay stepped back from his engine. It gleamed under the lights, every piece in perfect place. He pressed the activation button. The engine hummed to life, not just working, but singing. The sound was smooth and powerful, better than factory specifications. The diagnostic screen showed optimal performance in every category. The crowd erupted. Cheers and gasps and shouts of amazement filled the observation deck. Many beings had never seen a human work before. They had thought of humanity as a weak species, lost in a galaxy of giants. Now they were reconsidering. Dre stared at his own engine, then at Tay's, his face twisted with fury. "This proves nothing," he snarled. "Any fool can play with machines. True worth is proven in battle." "The contest was your choice to accept," Oris reminded him calmly. "You could have withdrawn. You did not. Because refusing would have been shameful." "And losing is not?" Tay asked quietly. The prince turned to him, all 4 fists clenched. For a moment, it looked like he might attack. The guards around the room tensed, ready to intervene. But then something surprising happened. Queen Vera stepped forward from the crowd. She had been watching silently the entire time, her expression unreadable. Now she walked to Tay's workstation and examined his engine closely. "Beautiful," she said softly. Then, louder. This is beautiful work. I have lived 200 years and seen countless craftsmen and warriors. I have never seen anything like this. She turned to face the crowd, her voice ringing with authority. The human has won, not through luck or tricks, but through skill, patience, and wisdom. These are qualities my people have always admired. These are qualities worthy of respect. She looked at Dre. Do you disagree, Prince? Dre's jaw tightened. The entire room was watching him. If he protested, he would look like a sore loser. If he attacked, he would be a criminal. He had no choice. The human won, he admitted through gritted teeth. I accept the result. He turned and walked out of the observation deck, his guards following quickly behind. He did not look back. The crowd began clapping. First the humans in attendance, using the gesture they had learned from Earth broadcasts. Then other species joined in, creating their own versions of applause. The sound grew louder and louder until it filled the entire deck like thunder. Tay stood at his workstation, surrounded by noise and celebration, feeling strangely calm. He had won. Against all odds, against every expectation, he had won. His hands were steady. His heart was quiet. And somewhere in the crowd, a queen was looking at him with new eyes. 3 days after the duel, a message arrived at Tay's workshop. It was simple, written in formal Cathani script that his translator struggled to interpret. The queen requests your presence. Come alone. Tay looked at the message for a long time. Since the contest, he had been overwhelmed with attention. Reporters wanted interviews. Merchants wanted deals. Other mechanics wanted to learn his techniques. He had hidden in his workshop, refusing all visitors, trying to find some peace. But he could not refuse the queen. The royal chambers were located in the highest section of the station, far from the crowded lower levels where Tay lived. Guards escorted him through corridors of increasing luxury, until he reached a door carved with ancient Cathani symbols. The door opened without a sound. Vera waited inside. She was not wearing armor today, only simple robes of dark purple. Without her ceremonial dress, she looked smaller somehow, more real, more like a person, and less like a legend. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Did I have a choice?" "Yes, you always have a choice." She gestured to a seat across from her. "Please, sit." He sat. The chair was too large for him, designed for Cathani bodies, and his feet dangled above the floor like a child's. It was hard to feel dignified. "I wanted to speak with you privately," Vera said. "Away from advisors and priests and politics. Just you and me." "All right." She was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more uncertain than he had ever heard it. "I must confess something. When I first learned what had happened, when they told me a human had touched my soul plate, I felt rage, violation. My soul plate is the most sacred thing I possess. The thought of a stranger handling it, changing it, was unbearable." Tay nodded. "I understand. I am sorry. I never meant to cause offense." "Let me finish." She held up a hand. "I felt that rage, yes, but then I put the armor back on, and I felt something I had not felt in over a century." She paused. "I felt comfortable." "Comfortable?" "My soul plate was forged when I was born, using the same design that has been used for 3,000 years. It was sacred, perfect, unchangeable." Her eyes grew distant. "But it was never quite right. There was always a slight pressure here, a small imbalance there. Tiny discomforts that I learned to ignore because complaining about a soul plate would be unthinkable." She looked at him directly. "You fixed those discomforts. You looked at something everyone called perfect and saw room for improvement. And then you made those improvements without asking permission, without caring about tradition. Her voice cracked slightly. Do you know how long it has been since anyone treated me like something that could grow? Like someone who was not already complete? Tay did not know what to say. He had just been doing his job, finding problems and fixing them. That was what mechanics did. I am 237 years old, Vera continued. I became queen at 42, after my mother died in battle. Since then, I have been frozen, preserved. Everyone around me treats my soul plate, and by extension me, as a museum piece, something to admire, but never touch, never change. That sounds lonely, Tay said quietly. It is, she smiled sadly. Extremely lonely. She stood and walked to a window that looked out at the stars. Her reflection was a ghost in the glass. I do not want to force you into this bond. Our traditions say we are betrothed, but traditions should not create prisoners. If you wish to leave, I will find a way to make it happen. I have power. I can change laws if necessary. Tay thought about her offer. He could return to his normal life, go back to his quiet workshop and his cold rice and his peaceful solitude. Forget all of this ever happened. But something had changed inside him. The duel had proven something not just to the galaxy, but to himself. He was capable of more than he had believed. He had stood against impossible odds and won. He had shown the universe what humans could do. And there was something else, something he had noticed during the contest when Vera had stepped forward to examine his work. The look in her eyes had not been judgment or evaluation. It had been admiration, wonder, recognition. She had seen him, really seen him. How many people in the galaxy could say that about a queen? What do you want? He asked, echoing the question he had asked her days ago. Vera turned from the window. I want to know you. I want to understand how a soft creature from a small planet learned to perform miracles with his hands. I want to see if this accidental bond could become something real. She paused. But only if you want the same thing. Tay stood from his oversized chair. He walked to the window and stood beside her, looking out at the same stars. I am a mechanic, he said. I fix broken things. I make them better. But I have never tried to fix a person before. I am not asking you to fix me. I know, but maybe we could fix each other. He smiled slightly. Or at least try. Vera studied him for a long moment. Then she reached out with one of her 4 hands and took his small human hand in hers. Her scales were smooth and warm, like sun-heated stone. Trying sounds acceptable, she said. They stood together in silence, watching the stars turn slowly outside the window. 2 beings from opposite ends of the galaxy, brought together by accident and tradition, choosing to stay together because of something else entirely. It was not love, not yet. It was too early for that. But it was the beginning of something, a foundation on which something greater could be built. And Tay, who had spent his whole life building things, was willing to see what they could create. There is one more thing, Vera said eventually. What? The wedding. Our traditions require a ceremony within 1 standard month. It will be elaborate. Tay thought about standing in front of thousands of aliens, wearing strange clothes, performing rituals he did not understand. The idea was terrifying. But he looked at Vera's uncertain expression, and he realized she was just as scared as he was. Maybe more. She had done this kind of thing countless times, but never with someone she actually cared about. "I will need a good suit," he said. Vera laughed. It was a beautiful sound, unexpected and genuine, echoing through the chamber like music. "I think we can arrange that," she said. The wedding was the largest event the galaxy had seen in a century. Ships arrived from every corner of known space, carrying delegates, dignitaries, and curious spectators. The station had to expand its docking facilities 3 times to accommodate them all. Hotels filled up. Restaurants ran out of food. The corridors were so crowded that movement became almost impossible. Tay stood in a small preparation room, wearing ceremonial robes that had taken a team of tailors 2 weeks to create. The fabric was traditional Kethani silk, dark purple with threads of gold, but the design had been modified for his human body. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized what he saw. "You look like a prince," Yuna said from the communication screen mounted on the wall. She had traveled from Earth for the ceremony, along with hundreds of other humans who wanted to witness history. But tradition required the groom to prepare alone, so she could only talk to him through the screen. "I feel like a fraud," Tay admitted. "You defeated an alien warrior prince in a duel. You are marrying a queen. You made our entire species proud." Yuna smiled. "That is the opposite of a fraud." A knock came at the door. Commander Hyun entered, also dressed in formal clothes, looking almost as uncomfortable as Tai felt. "It is time," Hyun said. The ceremony hall was enormous, originally designed for diplomatic conferences, but transformed into something magical. Flowers from 100 worlds decorated every surface. Lights floated in the air like captured stars. Music played, a combination of Kethani war drums and human strings that somehow worked together. Thousands of beings filled the seats. Tay saw Kethani warriors in full armor, Morvani diplomats in glass suits, Threll families with their children perched on their shoulders. He saw humans scattered throughout the crowd, their faces filled with wonder and pride. He walked down the center aisle, trying not to trip. His heart was pounding so loud he was sure everyone could hear it. At the end of the aisle stood Queen Vera. She wore her armor, polished and perfect, with her repaired soul plate gleaming at its center. But she had added something new, a crown of flowers from Earth, small white blossoms woven together by human hands. Tay had asked Yuna to arrange it as a surprise. Seeing it now made his chest tight with emotion. High Priestess Oris stood between them, ready to perform the ceremony. "We gather today to witness a bonding," Oris began, her ancient voice carrying through the hall. "A union between 2 souls, 2 species, 2 worlds. Such a bond has never existed before. It may never exist again. Let us honor this moment with the respect it deserves." The ceremony was long and complex, filled with Kethani rituals that Tai barely understood. He repeated words in languages he could not speak. He performed gestures that felt strange to his human body. He accepted blessings from priests whose religion was completely foreign to him. But through it all, he kept his eyes on Vera, and she kept her eyes on him. Finally, the moment arrived. "By tradition," Oris announced, "the bonded pair must exchange tokens of their commitment, objects that represent their souls." Vera went first. She gestured to one of her guards, who brought forward a small box. Inside was a soul plate, newly forged, smaller than hers but crafted with incredible detail. "This is for you," she said. "I had our finest smiths create it, using metals from our home world, but I designed it myself." She paused. I wanted you to have a soul plate of your own, so that we could be equal. Tay accepted the plate with trembling hands. It was beautiful, inscribed with patterns that represented both Cathani and human symbols. He could feel warmth radiating from the metal, as if it was already alive. "My turn," he said. He reached into his robe and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple silver with a single stone. The stone was dark blue, taken from Earth, from the same mountain where his grandfather had taught him to fish as a child. "I made this myself," he explained. "Humans have a tradition of exchanging rings when they marry. The circle represents eternity, something with no end." He held it out to her. "I know your people do not wear such things, but I wanted to give you something from my world, something that means what you mean to me." Vera took the ring carefully, examining it with all four of her eyes. Then, slowly, she slipped it onto one of her smaller fingers. "It fits perfectly," she said softly. The crowd erupted into applause. Cathani warriors roared their approval. Human guests wiped tears from their eyes. Even High Priestess Oris, ancient and stern, allowed herself a small smile. "The bond is complete," Oris declared. "By the authority of tradition, by the blessing of our ancestors, by the will of these two souls, I pronounce them bonded forever. May their union bring strength to both their peoples." The celebration lasted for 3 days. There was feasting and dancing and endless toasts. Politicians made speeches about unity and peace. Poets recited verses about love and fate. Children ran through the halls, playing games that combined Cathani and human rules in ways that made no sense, but seemed to work anyway. Tay was exhausted. He had shaken so many hands and claws and tentacles that his arms ached. He had smiled so much his face hurt. He had accepted so many gifts that he had lost count. But he was also happy, happier than he had ever been in his quiet, solitary life. On the third night, when the celebrations had finally quieted, Tay found a moment alone in his old workshop. He had kept it, refusing to move to the royal chambers, insisting that he needed a place where he could still work. Vera had agreed, understanding that this room was part of who he was. He was cleaning his grandfather's old toolkit when the door opened. A Morvani ambassador entered, his prosthetic arms sparking slightly. "Forgive me for intruding," the ambassador said. "I heard the new prince is a mechanic. My arm has been malfunctioning. Could you look at it?" Tay should have said no. He was tired. He was married. He was technically royalty now. He did not need to repair equipment anymore. But old habits die hard. "Put it on the bench," he said. "I will see what I can do." Word spread quickly. Within an hour, a line had formed outside his workshop. Aliens with broken devices, malfunctioning implants, damaged equipment. They came from all over the station, hoping the famous human mechanic might help them. Tay worked through the night, fixing one problem after another. When Vera found him the next morning, he was asleep at his workbench, his hands still holding a half-finished repair. She should have been offended. Her new husband, spending their wedding celebration doing common labor. But instead, she laughed. "My Groom," she said fondly, covering him with a blanket. "Fixing the galaxy one piece at a time." Tay mumbled something in his sleep and smiled. This was who he was, not a prince or a diplomat or a warrior. Just a mechanic who had accidentally married a queen. A man who solved problems with his hands instead of his words. A human who had proven that strength came in many forms. The galaxy was vast and broken in countless ways. There would always be something that needed fixing, something that needed improvement, something that needed a careful touch and a patient heart. And Kang Tae, the groom who fixed everything, would be there to answer the call.